The distress beacon arrived at 030 hours, and Commander Elena Vasquez knew immediately that something was wrong. Not because of the timing, or the corrupted signal that flickered across her screen like a dying heartbeat, but because of the voice buried in the static. A voice she hadn't heard in 7 years. A voice that belonged to a dead man. "Elena!" It whispered through the speakers, each syllable fighting through layers of interference. "I've loved you forever. Please find me." Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor of the observation deck. Around her, the night shift crew of the orbital station continued their work, oblivious. She rewound the message 3 times, her hands shaking so badly she could barely operate the controls. It was him, Dr. Lucas Grant, her fiancé. The man who had been consumed by a black hole anomaly during a research expedition 7 years ago. The man she'd watched die through a view screen, his ship crumpling like paper as gravitational forces tore it apart. The coordinates embedded in the signal made no sense. They pointed to a region of space that shouldn't exist, a void between mapped sectors where nothing had ever been detected. No planets, no stations, no reason for anything to be there. Elena pulled up the nav charts, cross-referenced them with every database she could access. Nothing matched. The location was marked as empty space, a gap in the star charts that humanity had simply never bothered to explore. She ran a voice analysis program, even though she already knew the result. 98% match. Lucas Grant. Impossible, but true. Her supervisor would call it a hoax, a cruel prank, or a malfunction. But Elena had spent 3 years loving that voice, and 4 years mourning it. She knew every inflection, every pause. This was real. By 0400 hours, she'd made her decision. She filed a false maintenance report for the research vessel Pathfinder, a small exploration craft usually reserved for asteroid surveys. By 0500, she'd loaded enough supplies for a 2-week journey. By 0600, she was gone. The station shrinking behind her as she punched in coordinates that led to nowhere. The journey took 6 days. 6 days of silence broken only by the hum of the engines and the endless replay of that message in her mind. She slept in brief, fitful bursts, dreaming of Lucas as he'd been. Brilliant, passionate, always talking too fast when he got excited about a new theory. She dreamed of the last time she'd seen him alive, the way he'd kissed her goodbye before boarding the research vessel that would become his coffin. She'd been angry that day. He'd promised to skip the mission, to stay for her sister's wedding. But the black hole data was too important, he'd said. Too valuable. He'd make it up to her. He never got the chance. On the 7th day, her sensors started screaming. Something was out there, exactly where the coordinates had led her. Something massive. Elena leaned forward, her breath catching as the object resolved on her view screen. It was a station, but unlike anything in human records, enormous. Ancient, built from materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal frozen in time. It orbited, a collapsed star, a white dwarf that burned with cold, spectral light. The architecture was wrong, too angular and too curved at once, defying the geometry her mind insisted should exist. She brought the Pathfinder alongside a docking port that opened like a mouth, silent and expectant. No communications, no warnings. Just an invitation. Elena suited up, checked her oxygen levels twice, and stepped into the airlock. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to report this discovery and let someone else investigate. But the message loop played in her helmet. "I've loved you forever. Please, find me." The interior of the station was breathable. She removed her helmet cautiously, tasting air that was somehow too clean, too pure. Emergency lighting flickered along corridors that stretched in impossible directions, curving up and around in ways that made her stomach lurch. She followed the only path that seemed intentional, a trail of lights that pulsed in sequence, leading her deeper. She found him in a chamber at the station's heart, Lucas Grant, exactly as she remembered him, standing in the center of a glowing platform that hummed with energy. He wasn't aged, wasn't different. He looked like a man who'd left 7 days ago. Not 7 years. When he saw her, his face broke into a smile that shattered something inside her chest. "You came," he said, and his voice was the same. Warm and real, and impossible. I knew you would. I've been waiting so long. Elena couldn't move, couldn't speak. She'd prepared herself for a trap, for an alien trick, for anything but this. Lucas stepped down from the platform and she stumbled backward, her hand going to the weapon at her hip. "Don't," she managed. "You're not real. You can't be real." "I am," Lucas said, stopping a few feet away. His eyes, the same brown eyes she'd loved, filled with something that looked like grief. "Elena, I didn't die. The black hole, it didn't destroy me. It pulled me here, to this place, this station. It exists outside normal space-time. The aliens who built it, they could manipulate temporal fields in ways we can't even comprehend." 7 years, Elena whispered. "It's been 7 years, Lucas." "I know." He looked down at his hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. "For you, it's been 7 years. For me, it's been 1 day. The same day, over and over, 2,555 times." The number hit her like a physical blow. Elena felt her legs weaken, and she grabbed the edge of a nearby console for support. "What are you saying?" Lucas gestured to the chamber around them, to the pulsing lights and the strange technology that lined the walls. "This station creates temporal loops. It traps time in a bubble, forces it to repeat. I've been living August 14th over and over, Elena, the day I arrived here. Every morning I wake up on that platform. Every night the loop resets. But I remember. Every single iteration I remember. Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would anyone build something like this? It's a prison." Lucas moved to a wall panel, his fingers dancing across controls that responded to his touch. A holographic display materialized, showing star systems Elena didn't recognize, species she'd never seen. The aliens who built this station, they called themselves the architects. They existed partially outside of linear time, could perceive past and future simultaneously. And they imprisoned something here, beings that exist completely outside time, entities that feed on temporal energy, that consume timelines and erase history. The display shifted, showing creatures that hurt to look at, forms that twisted through dimensions Elena's eyes couldn't properly process. She felt nausea rising in her throat. "The architects are gone now," Lucas continued, his voice tight with urgency. "But their prison remains. And the things inside, they're waking up. I can feel them, Elena. Every loop, they get closer to breaking free. And when I tried to send that message to you, when I finally figured out how to breach the temporal barrier, I disturbed them. I made it worse." Elena forced herself to focus, to think past the shock and the impossible reunion. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe. The loops are destabilizing. That's why you could reach me now. Why the barrier is thin enough for you to cross. But when they break free..." Lucas turned to face her fully and she saw the fear in his eyes. "Elena, if those things escape, they won't just destroy Earth. They'll erase it. They'll consume our entire timeline, unravel every moment of human history. It'll be like we never existed." The station shuddered around them, a low groan of stressed metal and energy. Lights flickered. In the distance, Elena heard something that sounded like screaming, but wrong, coming from a direction that didn't exist in normal space. "There has to be a way to stop them," she said, her mind racing through possibilities. "If the architects built this prison, they must have built safeguards. A way to reinforce it or destroy it," Lucas finished. "Yes. I've spent 2,000 days studying this technology, Elena. I know how it works. The station has a core, a quantum singularity that powers the temporal loops. If we collapse it, we can seal the prison permanently. The entities will be trapped forever, unable to escape. Then we do it. We collapse the core and get out." Lucas's expression stopped her. It was the look he used to get when he had to explain a difficult concept, when he knew the truth would hurt. "If we collapse the core, the temporal bubble implodes. Everything inside it gets erased from the timeline, including us." Elena stared at him, understanding dawning cold and terrible. "No, there has to be another way. I've looked. For 2,000 days I've looked." Lucas stepped closer, and this time she didn't pull away. "But Elena, There's something else. Something the architect technology can do. I can go back. What? The temporal controls? They can send matter back along an established timeline, back to a specific moment. I can return to the instant before I entered the black hole anomaly. I can avoid it. Change course. Live. His voice cracked. I can have a life. A real life, not this endless loop. Elena's mind reeled. Then do it. Go back. We'll figure out how to stop the entities some other way. If I go back, the timeline rewrites. These 7 years. Your 7 years. They stay. But my 7 years, the loop, everything that happened here, it gets erased. I won't remember any of it. I won't remember finding this place, or studying the technology, or sending you that message. Lucas reached out, his hand hovering near her face but not quite touching. I won't remember loving you for 2,000 days straight, watching you through the temporal windows, seeing you grieve and move forward and become the person you are now. I won't remember any of it. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Cracks appeared in the walls. Bleeding light that was the wrong color. The screaming grew louder. We're out of time, Lucas said. The entities are breaking through. We have to make a choice. We can both die here, collapsing the core and sealing them forever. Or I can use the architect technology one last time. I can send myself back, and you can trigger the collapse from outside the blast radius. You'll live. I'll live. But I'll never know this happened. Elena felt tears burning her eyes, streaming down her face. 7 years she'd mourned him. 7 years of grief and guilt and wondering what she could have done differently. And now he was here, real and alive, and offering her an impossible choice. There's a third option, she said, her voice steady despite everything. What if I stay? What if we both stay in the loop, together? We could. No. Lucas's voice was firm. Elena, you've lived 7 years. You've grown, changed, experienced things. I've lived one day, over and over. If you stay, you'll be trapped in that same day with me forever. You'll lose everything you've become, and the entities will still break free eventually. The loop is failing. Another shudder. The lights went dark, replaced by a pulsing red emergency glow. Through the chamber walls, Elena could see shadows moving. Things with too many angles pressing against the barriers. How do I trigger the collapse from outside? She asked. Lucas pulled a small device from his pocket, a piece of architect technology that glowed with soft blue light. This is keyed to the core. Once you're clear of the station, activate it. The singularity will implode, taking everything in a 50-kilometer radius with it. And you? I'll be at the temporal controls. The moment you activate the device, I'll initiate the backwards jump. If my calculations are right, I'll be gone before the implosion reaches me. I'll wake up in my ship 7 years ago, with just enough warning to change course. He pressed the device into her hand. I'll live, Elena, because of you. The screaming stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Elena looked toward the chamber entrance and saw the first of them. A creature that existed in too many moments at once, its form flickering between states, between times. It turned toward them, and she felt its attention like ice water in her veins. Run, Lucas said. Now. They ran, through corridors that twisted and writhed, past walls that bled temporal energy, under lights that showed them their own ghosts, versions of themselves from other moments, other possibilities. Elena's lungs burned. Behind them, the entities poured through breaches in the prison walls, creatures of pure temporal chaos that left reality fractured in their wake. Lucas led her through the labyrinth, his knowledge of the station's layout perfect after 2,000 iterations. They reached a junction where the path split. Lucas grabbed her arm, pulling her to a stop. You go left. It leads to the docking bay. I go right, to the temporal controls. His chest heaved with exertion, but his eyes were clear. Elena, I need you to know something. Every single day, every loop, I thought about you. I watched you through the temporal windows. I saw you at my funeral. I saw you crying. I saw you slowly healing. I saw you become stronger, braver. I watched you apply for the commander position. I watched you save that colony ship last year. I've been with you for every moment, and I'm so proud of who you've become." The entities were getting closer. The walls around them began to crack, reality itself splintering. "I love you," Elena said. The words inadequate, but all she had. "I never stopped. I know." Lucas smiled, that same smile she'd fallen in love with a lifetime ago. "And 7 years ago, in a few minutes, I'm going to meet you for the first time all over again. No memories of this, no knowledge of what you sacrificed. But Elena, somewhere deep down, I think I'll know how it could have slipped outside of our perimeters. I think I'll feel it, and I promise you, somehow I'll find you." He kissed her then, quick and desperate and real. Then he pushed her toward the left corridor and ran right, disappearing into the crimson-lit darkness. Helena ran. Her legs moved on autopilot, muscle memory taking over as her mind screamed at her to go back, to stay, to die with him rather than live with this. But she kept running, because that's what he needed her to do. The Pathfinder came into view, still docked, still waiting. She threw herself through the airlock, her fingers flying over the controls to seal it behind her. The station's hull groaned as she initiated undocking procedures. Through the view screen, she could see the entities swarming now, dozens of them, hundreds, all converging on the core where Lucas would be standing at the controls. She punched the engines, the Pathfinder lurching away from the docking port. 50 kilometers. She had to reach 50 kilometers. The distance counter climbed with agonizing slowness. 10, 20, 30. Behind her, the station began to glow, temporal energy building to a critical point. 40 kilometers. 45. At 49.3 kilometers, Elena activated the device. The singularity collapsed. Reality inverted. The station and everything in it folded in on itself, crushed down to a point of infinite density and zero volume. The implosion created a shockwave of temporal energy that hit the Pathfinder like a hammer, sending it spinning. Elena fought the controls, barely maintaining stability as the wave passed through her ship, through her, showing her 1,000 possible timelines all at once. In one, Lucas died in the black hole. In another, he never went on the mission. In a third, the entities escaped and consumed everything. But in one timeline, one single thread of possibility, she saw him. Lucas, younger, pulling his ship away from the black hole anomaly at the last second, his face confused as he followed an instinct he didn't understand. The wave passed. The station was gone. The collapsed star burned alone. No trace remaining of the prison or its inmates, or the man who had sacrificed everything to save a future he'd never remember. Elena set course for home, her hands steady on the controls, even as tears blurred her vision. The journey back took 6 days. 6 days to process what had happened, what she'd lost, what she'd gained. Lucas was alive, somewhere, living a life he'd been denied. He'd never know what he'd done, never know that he'd saved humanity, never know that he'd loved her for 2,000 days. On the 7th day, as Earth came into view, her communications panel chimed. A message, text only, origin unknown. Elena opened it with shaking hands. 2 words, find Elena. She sat back in her chair, a sound between a laugh and a sob escaping her throat. The message had no metadata. No sender information, but she knew. Somehow, across 7 years and a rewritten timeline, a part of Lucas had remembered. A fragment of those 2,000 days had survived the temporal reset, manifesting as an instinct, a compulsion, a message sent to himself without knowing why. Commander Elena Vasquez wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and opened a new search window. Dr. Lucas Grant, she typed. Current location and assignment. If he'd avoided the black hole, he'd still be out there. Still be a researcher. Still be the man she'd loved. The search returned results. Lucas Grant, quantum physicist, currently assigned to the orbital research station Aurora, the same station where Elena had received the distress signal. The same station she was about to return to. She smiled through her tears, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. He'd told her he would find her, but maybe, just maybe, she'd find him first. And when she did, When she introduced herself to a man who'd never met her but had loved her forever, she'd know something he didn't. That their love had already saved the universe once. It could do so again.